in the SEC Conference. We're going to build the best football program in the SEC Conference.
You have now arrived at Stadium in Gale.
The kick, it's been blocked again! How about it? It's been blocked again! It's going to heat one deep down the field. It's going to be to the goal line. It's going to be gone! It's a touchdown! And the Gators have won the game! Tyreek Cleveland! How about? I can't believe what I just saw! Dropping back to throw, pops and fires the ball over the middle. It's Dory! It's Dory! Got a touchdown! Dory got a touchdown! Oh man! Dory's got a touchdown! Ahmad Black, in his final game as a Gator, takes it all the way home and sends Urban out the winner.
You have now arrived at Stadium in Gale.
Boys and girls, ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of Stadium in Gale. It's your favorite Uncle Silk.
It's Dan.
And Delatorre.
Same corner, same time. It's President's Day, right? I always get Veterans
It
Day
is.
and it's President's Day. Happy President's Day. How y'all boys feeling? Y'all good?
Good. Had a great week in Canada. Back just in time to celebrate President's Day. But yeah, no, it's good to be back. Do you guys want to do a 1 through 46 ranking of presidents today, or?
Yeah. Let's definitely jump into the politics.
Okay, perfect.
I didn't prepare.
Maybe we can do that next week.
Did you bring back any maple syrup, Daniel?
No, but they do love maple syrup up there. I did bring back some bourbon. Those bourbon drinkers, especially in Florida, know that it has been hard to find Buffalo Trace, Blanton's, those kind of things. Eagle Rare here in Florida, but in Canada, it is overflowing. So brought back some bottles of bourbon that, by the way, shout out to America. Shout out to the dollar bill. The spending power in Canada is absolutely incredible. Basically, everything's like 30% off. So shout out to the U.S. economy. Shout out to the U.S. dollar as well.
No, you didn't bring back any Crown Royal?
No, I can find that pretty easily here. But let's see. I had some
over there.
Say what?
No exclusive.
No exclusives. No Canadian exclusives over there. Did have some poutine. What else?
It'd be wild.
Big tobacco state, by the way. A lot of smokers up there, a lot of chewing tobacco. They don't allow you to sell nicotine pouches, which we'll talk about Lucy here in a second, but just kind of an interesting place. Whistler, beautiful. Anybody that's a skier would highly encourage you to go visit Whistler. So had a great time up there, but enough about me. Nick, baseball got canceled. So how was your weekend?
Yeah, had some people over, watched the fights on Saturday. Good UFC card. Sunday, just hung out with the wife. Baseball got swept by St. John's, technically.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they got swept. I think they just lost one game. So I think you have to lose one game
sweep. So one game sweep.
Silk, how was your weekend?
Man, a little gloomy with the weather, but
yeah,
a little bit of the same, man. Just been working. Knocking out these roll-up interviews in person. So we had Kermit Whitfield this week. We shot down so far D. Gordon, Tyreek Stevenson, and Chris Johnson. We got Zach Carter on deck. We just, knocking out some work for this relaunch, and just work, bro. Not a whole lot going on.
Have you seen Zach since he got to Cincinnati?
I seen him last offseason when I went up there to do some Beyond the Chunk work in the summer. He was working out with Malik Davis and those guys, man. But he's a true defensive tackle now. I'll tell you
Bro,
that.
he blew up. That's what I was going to say. Yeah. He blew up.
Yeah.
No tweener anymore. When you talked about him going into the draft, you're like, a little undersized, maybe a weak side defensive end. Not anymore.
Not anymore.
True defensive tackle. He was
Big
talking to
boy.
me about workouts, and at that time, him and Uma Nealon was talking about the difference between college and pro workouts, and he was saying, like, man, listen, I do more yoga and just random workouts and balance stuff than I do all that strength and slinging weights around. So, yeah, he's a true D tackle now, man. It's going to be interesting to catch up with him now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we got a big show today. We have Sean Kelley, the new voice of the Gators. Well, I guess he's not new anymore. He's been here a few years now since Mick Hubert retired. And then we got Neil Blackman coming on to talk a little bit more about Florida Gators basketball, which has won 7 of the last 8, I believe. And right now, definitely in the picture and in the hunt for a decent spot in the NCAA tournament. Todd Golden and Portal God Todd is now 4-0 against Mike White, which I know disappoints a lot of former fans of Mike White, and definitely the Florida Gators beat, which seems sad every time Mike White loses. Not you, Nick, just some other folks in general. But before we do that, let's give a quick shout out to our friends over at Lucy. Lucy is a deliver straight to your door nicotine pouch, 100% pure nicotine and always 100% tobacco free, anywhere from 2 milligrams all the way up to 12 milligrams. If you are a user, probably the 4 to 8. If you've been underwhelmed potentially by what you might be able to find at the gas station, 12 might be the way to go for you. Mint, apple ice, espresso, mango, a whole lot of different options for you flavor wise. They also do a monthly subscription, which allows you to save 15% off of your order. There is no commitment. You can cancel at any time. So again, we've talked about Lucy a lot on this show. I know Nick has used it. I know I have. Great product, great quality. So encourage you, if that is a path that you want to go down from a nicotine pouch perspective, go take a look at lucy.co/stadium. You'll get 20% off of your order and free shipping all of the time. Here's the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. This product does contain nicotine, and nicotine is an addictive chemical. Okay, perfect.
I like
Jim.
this little they have a little trash pouch for you there on top, Dan.
Yeah, creative.
Dump your pouch, dump it in there. You're good to go.
Good to
Don't
go.
litter.
Good to go. I appreciate the show and tell, Nick. That was great.
That's
So obviously a lot of announcements to talk about. And we might split these up a little bit depending on when Sean joins us this morning. But first piece of news is assistant offensive line coach Darnell Stapleton is headed to the NFL. We've been hinting at this for a few months that there might be a shakeup on the offensive side of the ball with the NFL. This is what we were alluding to. There was a hope for a long time now to be back in the NFL. So Darnell Stapleton, former Pittsburgh Steeler and 2-year Florida Gator offensive line coach, is heading to the Washington Commanders, joining Brian Johnson and a few other former Gators under Dan Quinn, who was the Gators defensive coordinator with Will Muschamp. So, Nick, that leaves an open spot on the offensive side of the ball. You've been hammering home every single time somebody asks. There's not an open position on the offensive side of the ball. And sure enough, now there is. So your excuses are done. So, Nick, what's Florida going to do here with their open coaching roster spot?
Yeah, well, you've got less than 3 weeks to until spring. So I don't know that Billy Napier has shown that he rushes to hirings or decisions. So I don't know that you'll have a offensive coordinator picked outside of him for that. I don't know that you'll have another coach picked. I think last year Kerry Colbert leaves for the NFL, and then you saw David Decker move into an on-field role. I could see Ryan O'Hara being moved to an on-field quarterback coach, which would free Billy Napier up from coaching the quarterbacks and let him kind of maybe move around practice, see every group, not tie him to one spot in the field. I could see them hiring another offensive line coach at some point because that seems very important to Billy Napier. He's said multiple times without being asked, and every time he's asked, 2 offensive line coaches, he says, are very important to him and the program. You've got 13 guys to be coached. Why would you not split them up?
Yeah, doubling down on that would be nasty work.
I mean, would you be surprised?
Nah, I mean, I would like for the if they go off offensive line again, for that guy to come in with some coordinating experience of some sort. But if they double down, it better be like a super home run hire. And I wanted to ask this question. I've seen so many people saying that we got rid of the worst of the 2 offensive line coaches. Like how do people figure that out?
Because there was
one
a
they don't.
commitment.
One,
And
they
they
don't,
just
but
assume.
2, they don't figure it out. And 2, Florida didn't get rid of anyone.
Right
now.
Or lost got rid of,
right.
however it may have happened. But I was just trying to figure out who's the better out of the 2. Like I don't know how they did that. They had tryouts or something.
Yeah. Stape had a nice 40.
There was what?
Edged out.
The only thing that we know between the 2 of them, there was about a $700,000 difference in yearly salary. Other than that, we don't know who was better, who was liked more, who was liked less. I mean, I think that we've heard pros and cons about both. But I don't think that the way that we've heard about anything about Darnell Stapleton is that he was the worst of the 2 or that Rod Sales are worst of the 2. I think it's just a matter of perception. I think it's a matter of coaching, but I think that or individual coaching style. But I think at the end of the day, Florida has or Billy Napier said multiple times that he wants 2 offensive line coaches. Mm-hmm. If what we've seen out of the offensive line last year with 2 coaches doesn't get significantly better, 3 offensive line coaches,
maybe try 4.
Maybe try 4, but that
more coaches, more better.
So hopefully they can figure it out, but that does leave that open spot. Florida's obviously still without a strength and conditioning coach with Craig Fitzgerald heading up to Boston College. So that's unfortunate timing. I know that they've got, we'll talk a little bit more about it here in a second, but they've got a leader and a program in place right now. But, does Ryan O'Hara move up? Do you move one of the analysts into the offensive line coach position until you find somebody? What do you do? But I would imagine that most coaches aren't chomping at the bit to leave their programs right now either.
Okay, I offer this.
Yeah.
So O'Hara has like a role where he's technically not an on the field coach, but he's on the sidelines and he can encourage things and whatnot, right?
That's it.
Yeah. That's it. And I like
Florida
that.
Florida is definitely not under investigation. They do
Right.
not break NCAA rules. So Ryan O'Hara is certainly not coaching.
Well, they are under investigation for NIL.
For sure are under investigation. Yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
I hope they don't look into O'Hara, but
yeah.
Can we get an O'Hara to back up Sale? How about that? Like, won't we find that guy? Like, since we got these guys that we can have on the sidelines and encourage, but not, instead of 2 offensive line coaches. Like,
there's a lot. They already have a lot of not coach analysts.
Right.
At every position. So they've got some at offensive line.
They did lose Blackshear. I know that he took an on-field coach. I know that
Army.
Yeah, I know that he was one of the analysts that the Gators have, but I would imagine that the Gators have at least 3 or 4 folks that focus solely on the offensive line that are in some sort of analyst type of role.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, we could get a little bit more flexible with who we hiring on the offensive side, because if we can have this off the field guy that kind of coaches the quarterbacks, like said but not said type situation, then you can do that with a second offensive line guy. Instead of having 2 on the field offensive line guys. Like, you got opportunity right now to upgrade that side of the ball with, just find somebody elite across the country that could fit a need. But I don't want to just find some offensive line coach when we could just do the O'Hara thing at offensive line.
Looks like Caleb Johnson is your offensive line quality control guy.
Put some respect on his name.
He was a strength and conditioning assistant and offensive line performance liaison at Rutgers.
Oh, that was a Rutgers.
Played
in the
NFL.
Name.
Played in the NFL for the Bears, Browns, Cardinals, Chiefs, Eagles, Ravens, and Vikings over the course of 5 years, and is from my favorite town of Jacksonville, Florida.
That was a nice plea, Silk, and I look forward to your response when the second offensive line coach is hired at some point in this offseason.
Hey man, I just call it when it happens, brother.
Yeah.
But at this point, if you roll out, and we're gonna get into offensive line recruiting, we got a big fish this weekend. But if you roll out a bad offensive line again this fall, bro, like it's like no more excuses. Your guys are here. You've been here long enough. You've rotated coaches in that spot at this point. Like, there's no excuses for a terrible offensive line.
Yeah. So, but that does leave Florida, numerous options. It doesn't seem that they're going to go down the offense coordinator route. Do you promote Ryan O'Hara? That seems to be Florida's kind of MO. If something like this happens, last year they promoted Russ Callaway. Not saying that Russ didn't deserve the job, but they lost Piegler to the NFL, promoted Russ Callaway from an analyst role into to tight end coach. Obviously, they went and got Billy Gonzalez once Kerry Colbert left, a familiar guy to the University of Florida. So we will see. But let's pause that conversation, gentlemen. We have the voice of the Gators, Sean Kelley, joining us now. Sean, it is a pleasure to chat with you, my friend.
Well, good morning. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you. Happy Monday to you. A big weekend in Florida Gators basketball. But Sean, I know this is your first time on the show, so I want to get to know you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your story. I know you're appreciative of you taking over for Mick Hubert, but talk to us a little bit about your story of coming to Gainesville and, ultimately how you landed here in with the orange and blue.
I guess the story is somewhat unexpected. After a long run with the New Orleans Pelicans and Saints, I went to ESPN full-time in 2019 and was working there on a variety of sports and was really in negotiations for my next ESPN contract when Mick retired. And the news came out of the blue, and then the contact for my interest or whatever was certainly unexpected. But the more I looked at it, the more I liked the idea of it. And especially with me staying at ESPN in a smaller way, the Florida job was even more attractive. So there weren't many jobs I would say that I was going to leave that situation for, but Florida would be on that list. And so it's worked out really well. And here I am, in Gainesville, Florida, where I never expected to be 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So, I'm a Gator, and that's where I plan on being the rest of the way. But I think that probably I'm best suited for this job now because of the cumulative experience that I gained over the years. It wasn't going to be easy following in the footsteps of a guy that, was the generational voice of this program and had been, courtside or press box wise for, championships through the golden years of the Gators. But I'm glad I did it. I really am. I have no regrets.
That's awesome.
We talked to you right after. I don't even know if you had called a game yet, but we talked to you, Zach and I, and you mentioned being part of a team, and that's kind of something that you missed. A year and a half, a couple seasons into it now, do you feel part of that team? Even, especially when you then go to Yankee Stadium and you're flying in, you're calling a game on Sunday night for the radio, and then you're back out of New York or wherever ESPN takes you.
Yeah, when I got into this business, and this was a long time ago, guys, the idea was to be, the voice of a Division I program and be a part of that program and wear the colors, and that's kind of where my career started. It kind of took a hard turn toward the NBA, 2004-ish. Thereabouts. And so, being with the team continued in that sense, just in at a different place or a different sport, I guess. When I went to ESPN, it was I dabbled in doing some national stuff while still with New Orleans and really liked it. Every game was a big game. And it was one of those deals. It was a time in my life was like, if you want to find out if you can do it at a national level, now's your chance, because otherwise it's going to go away. That window's going to close. So yes, going to Yankee Stadium or, calling an NBA Western Conference Finals game, in Los Angeles, or seeing all the great college football venues across the country, the NFL, all of that, is tremendous. And there was some mental benefit to doing a game and then at the end just clearing out. Have no vested interest in who wins or loses.
You're just a mercenary. You fly into the war zone, handle a battle, and then you're out.
Yeah, enjoy the venue, enjoy the moment, and don't have to deal with the consequences of a loss or the roller coaster of wins and losses over time. But I did miss it. I really did. And I guess I didn't realize it, but I missed being around this age group too a little bit. So now I get the best of both worlds, right? So I get to still go do some of those ESPN things, but I'm back being with a team again, even though it wasn't very long that I was away from a particular team. But, you know, it's interesting. I came in at the same time as Billy Napier and Todd Golden both. And I was very curious to see how those programs would be built from the ground up, because they both needed a ground up rebuild, basically. So I love process, and I wanted to be around that. And both of those gentlemen and their staffs and the players and everything else have been most welcoming. I mean, I have unfettered access to all their practices. I travel with them. I basically live with them for the most part during a season. And so I get to share in their journey and their development. And that's as much fun as doing the games themselves. So I'm glad I have that again. And, you know, baseball is a little bit of a different animal because I'm in and out with them this time of year, but it won't be long. I mean, you know, in about a month or two, I'll be with them on a daily basis too. So all those things, you know, make this the coolest job ever.
Well,
Hey, Sean-
listen, Todd's won 7 of 8. You might be going to the Final Four somewhere, and we'll push you out of the baseball press box as long as we can, if that means basketball is continuing to win.
Well, it's interesting. When I made my baseball schedule a little while back, I sit down with Steve McLean and we kind of try and map this thing out, right? And sure enough, there's a baseball series at LSU. So I certainly wanted to work the rematch of last year's national championship series. My grown children live over that direction. And I lived an hour away from Baton Rouge before I came here to Gainesville. So that was the series that I was very interested in working. Well, lo and behold, that series falls the first weekend of the NCAA men's basketball tournament. So when we made the schedule, and I think I've believed this now for some time, that Florida basketball is the tournament team this year. So it's bittersweet. I wanted to work that series baseball-wise, but I'm excited because I think that I'll be busy with men's basketball during that same weekend.
If you want to get a good laugh, tell God your plans.
Yeah, how that works. Yeah.
Sean, I want to ask, just you being able to prepare for football, baseball, basketball, and then you also have some other ESPN assignments. How does your brain kind of function to fluctuate between? Because obviously there's different paces for all of them. There's a lot more dead time maybe during football and baseball to fill in, although baseball seems to be getting a little quicker. But talk to me a little bit about kind of mental preparation of being able to balance between, you know, kind of a fast-paced basketball game to, you know, maybe a slower-paced, you know, football game or baseball game where you do have to fill that dead time.
Once I get into the game itself, it kind of takes care of itself. You know, I was blessed to be able to dabble in all three kind of coming up younger in my career. And then when I went to the NBA full time, there really wasn't a chance to do a whole lot of other sports because the way that calendar works. So one of the reasons why I went to ESPN full time was to start doing multiple sports again, because I missed that. I loved, you know, even growing up, everybody asked me, you know, what's your favorite sport? You know, and growing up in St. Louis and the Midwest and all that, baseball was probably the favorite. The Cardinals, I played more baseball than anything else. But I was one of those kids that when it was football season, that was my favorite sport. And then when it was wintertime, it was basketball and hockey. And then, you know, I loved the change of seasons and cycling through that. So I guess my brain kind of works that way as well. The prep is a little tricky, and I've gotten better at it over the years of being more in the moment. You know, that old phrase, how do you eat an elephant, you know, one bite at a time. So sometimes it makes for tight prep windows, but I'm not the kind of guy that like can sit down. Like I'm looking at like the weekend of March 2nd and 3rd. That's a good example. So I've got men's basketball at South Carolina on Saturday, and I've got Sixers at Mavericks on Sunday afternoon. And those two games are less than 24 hours apart. So I will do my best to try and just lay down a little bit of prep for that NBA game. But then I have to, this is just the way my brain works, I have to focus on what's right in front of me. So I've got to take care of and be pretty dialed in on Florida versus South Carolina that weekend first. And then as soon as that game is done, it's immediately flush it and then turn all my attention toward Sixers and Mavs. It was the same when I was at ESPN Radio, you know, even during COVID. there was a lot of weekends I'd have a big college football game on Saturday and then an NFL game on Sunday. Some guys can bounce back and forth between that prep. I would have to kind of get the foundation laid early in the week and then focus in on one, and then I could do the other. I'm not that talented. So one at a time, basically.
Sean's Kevin Durant throws a pass to Russell Westbrook, and that's it. Oh, wait, hold on.
That's a 2-point. Yeah, no, I always I give credit to people like you. I know Kirk Herbstreit's been doing the Amazon Thursday night game, and then he's doing game day, and then he's doing usually the nightly game or the afternoon game for ESPN there. So I know that there's probably a lot of juggling around there. But Sean, when I was looking this up, I know that Mick Huber was obviously at UF for the better part of 30 plus years now. And then when you took over, but the Gators have only ever had 4 voices of the Gators since I believe the 1940s. So kind of the Pittsburgh Steelers of team announcing here. But what was it like to replace Mick Hubert? And do you and him, I mean, obviously you probably chatted, but do you and him still communicate or catch up, or how did that transition go for you?
Yeah, it went well for me because, again, kind of what I said earlier about maybe my age or things that I've done in my career. I don't know if I could have done this maybe even 10 years ago. Just, one of those deals I knew that I wasn't going to be, no one's ever going to be Mick Hubert, right? So there was no I'm going to replace him or I'm going to be regarded in the same way as Mick. It was basically being secure with my own style and that kind of a thing. And Mick and I will talk every so often. Actually, we just talked a couple of weeks ago for a good 40 minutes or whatever. It seems that we time it out right, that we have plenty to talk about when we do catch up. And I didn't know Mick Hubert before I got the job. I knew of him. I knew his work, but I didn't know him personally. And it's an interesting choice that he made, that basically there was no rocking chair tour. He doesn't even live in Gainesville anymore. So there was no kind of voice of the Gators emeritus. It was a clean, I'm out.
Yeah.
Good, and I'll follow when I want. Otherwise I'm playing golf and working at the church and spending time with my wife. And that's exactly what Mick has done. And I think he's very happy in that sense. And for me, maybe in some small way that's helped a little bit, but I always want to acknowledge, his 70th birthday was this past Friday. So I wanted to make sure on Saturday that we acknowledge that on the air. There's no denying, who he is and his tenure. And you're right. I'm one of 4 with 3 of us living. It's interesting. There's a local commercial spot now running that has all 3 of our voices on it.
Oh, wow.
And that's going to be truly unique, so Quality Plumbing in Gainesville is celebrating their 40th anniversary. So we found a way to what's transpired in that 40 years. And one is, David Steele, then Mick Hubert, and now me. So that was a very interesting project to have the 3 of us collaborate on that. But, kind of back to what I was saying is I knew what my style would be. I'm now kind of set in my ways in that sense. And it was great because I was nervous before the very first football game I did here for the Gators. I'd done other Florida games, but, being the voice of the Gators, it felt good to be nervous again. Don't you want to have kind of that chill a little bit? Not scared, but just nervous. I think it's a healthy thing. And so that felt right and felt good. And here we are. And so I'm sure there are some that, will say, well, you're no Mick Hubert. You're right. I don't want to be Mick Hubert.
Yeah.
But I think that most of the fans and certainly the people I work with have been very, very gracious and very supportive. And I've felt welcomed. And, that big moment will come at some point where, maybe Gator fans would love it, but I would get a chance to call some of the big moments like Mick did.
Yeah.
Did young Sean Kelley want to grow up and be a play-by-play caller? What was your childhood dreams?
Yeah, comes an age for all of us, right? That you figure out that, guess what? You're not going to be in the major leagues. You're not going to play pro basketball. So I love sports so much that I wanted to find a way to stay in it. And in high school, I grew up in a house where the game was always on, whether it was actively being listened to or it was just kind of background noise. And when you grew up in St. Louis, you're around these voices, right? Jack Buck and Mike Shannon. Dan Kelly was the voice of blues hockey. Bill Wilkerson was the legendary voice. He did Missouri football and some Big Red football. So the one thing that really stood out was they were not only ambassadors of the team, but they were ambassadors of the city too. And then when I kind of locked in on that in high school and then off into college, then you start to see what these Division I announcers are like for their schools and their towns, and it's very similar, just on a smaller scale. And that intrigued me as much as anything else. And then, you're going to pay me to go to all the games and travel with the team, and well, I was in, so I was hooked. So thankfully, I found a way to work my way into some pretty good spots.
What was your first game? You do a Pop Warner game, a high school game? Like, were you nervous? What was that like?
What are the minor leagues for an up-and-comer?
Yeah. Like,
it's funny that you say minor leagues and whatnot, because I'm sure it chaps some people's butts that I've done Major League Baseball, but I didn't come up through minor league baseball. And we're seeing more of that today. All the paths or the ways that I came up through don't seem to matter anymore. And so a lot of times when young people come to me and say, hey, what should I do next? Or, what was your path and how do I follow that? I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't help you, because those things are gone. I mean, it used to be the old Kevin Bacon 6 degrees of separation, right? That's how you network this thing. That's how you get your next gig, all those things. The first thing I did, though, was Southern Illinois University women's basketball. That was my first play-by-play job.
Go Salukis.
Go Salukis. And so, you ride the bus. I learned real quick how you should conduct yourself around a team, how you should travel, all those things. And then you just never say no, right? Then the next thing you know, it's, hey, let's do some high school football or high school basketball, or, host pregame, halftime, postgame for the big network. And you just start kind of just stacking these chips on top of each other. And that's kind of how it progresses. But that first play-by-play, there's a tape somewhere, and I hope it never surfaces.
We're on it.
Yeah, I hope it never surfaces. Some would say that I'm so old that it's probably on some reel-to-reel somewhere, but I'm not that old. I'm sure it wasn't very good, but I kept at it. So
lucky for you, Sean. I don't think we have the machine that plays that kind of tape anymore.
Yeah. No, there's like if you're old enough, you know what a cart machine is too. That's another old radio thing too. So.
It is interesting that you mentioned that, because I get asked a lot, hey, how'd you get into your job? And when I was in journalism school, it was, you're a fly on the wall, you do this. And at the time I was in college, Bill Simmons was just becoming popular, and he was an unabashed Celtics fan. And it's like, hey, he's a national writer who is openly cheering for the Celtics. And this is like, what is this? And now there's so many different ways. Before it was like, you go to college, you write for the paper, and then you hopefully get to cover traffic, or hopefully get to cover high school somewhere, and you pay your dues. And now there's just so many different avenues. Ethan Ivey is at the game on Friday, and they have a student radio network, and that's a way to do it. Or you can just start a YouTube channel. So there's so many different ways to kind of get into our business now, that you don't have to go these traditional routes, that I didn't even do a traditional route. I've never worked for a paper. I've always worked for online internet essay blogs.
Right. Right.
Must have been a good guy that got you that good job, Nick.
Shout out to Dan for getting me my first job.
No, in that sense, the digital world has made this a more welcoming place. And I think it's actually helped to diversify our business in a better way, because, when I was coming up, kind of like you were talking about with regard to a traditional media outlet, your opportunity to call a game was based solely on would some local radio station, whatever, give you the chance to do it, let alone the equipment to do it. The old stories about Bob Costas and I probably did it too. You'd get the little tape recorder and you'd go up in the stands, you'd kind of call the game from the stands. That was really the only organic way to do this. And so now, with regard to streaming and podcasting and online platforms, with regard to just even writing, as you guys mentioned, there's so many more ways for you to get a tape. And tape's the antiquated word, right? What do you call it? I mean, a file? Yeah.
Well, it's like when we talk about like football highlights. You're like, oh, we're watching the film. You're like, hey man, nothing is on film.
Yeah, right. Film. There's no tape. It's here's my link. That's that's kind of what this is now. Like, it's interesting. frankly, guys, I hope that I've made my last demo reel ever. God willing, I don't do that ever again. But even just kind of that having that last one, my agent, thank God, had my demo reel or link for them to listen to here at Florida. So the days of trying to put those things together or clip file or whatever, it's just different than what I came up with.
It's crazy times. Well, Sean, I know that you're busy. I know that you've got a busy week ahead of you. We appreciate your time coming on today. I know that the Gator faithful is excited to listen to this interview as well, and it's been fun watching you continue to grow and be the voice of the Gators. So thank you so much for your time today, and we will hopefully chat with you soon. And best of luck on what I would imagine is quite a busy next couple of months for you.
Yeah, I call this the crazy 8. Okay, so past week is the start of the busiest 8 weeks of the Gators athletic calendar. When you look at how that. So we're 1 week into the crazy 8. And then when the crazy 8 is done, that's when I start NBA playoff stuff too. So glad you got me now, because it's probably time.
We'll send you a couple Starbucks gift cards in the next couple of weeks.
I appreciate it. Hey, big one for Florida on Tuesday. We'll see how this goes against Alabama. We're going to learn a lot.
Absolutely.
Hopefully you get your big Gator moment this tournament with the basketball team.
Maybe so. Maybe so.
You meant baseball's second game of the year at UNF. Thought that was what the big one is. I'll be driving up there because their TV situation at UNF is not great. So I'll be driving up to Jacksonville for that one.
Enjoy that. Hopefully it won't be raining, because that was a real bummer this past weekend. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I hope to see you back at Condren, Sean, but not anytime soon. I hope basketball keeps you away from baseball for a little bit.
I'll see you Friday night. Friday night.
Never mind.
Friday night. Well, Sean, thank you so much. And we will talk with you soon, my friend.
All right, guys. Take care. Thanks.
Have a good one, man.
Sean Kelley, voice of the Gators. Appreciate him coming on the program today.
We gotta think of, because this happened. We had Jeff Cardozo on another podcast. For the people who aren't watching, like we're like picking voices that are way better than ours for an audio only platform. So thank you for Sean for coming on, but like, don't bring in your replacement, guys.
Yeah, phenomenal voice. Glad he's the new voice of the Gators. Have not ever been complimented on my voice. People say I have a voice for miming. That's what people say about my voice.
You have a voice for print, a face for podcast, and a voice for print.
Face for podcast, voice for print, and opinions that don't need to be heard. So with that being said, I know we have Neil Blackman that's going to be joining the show, so we will pause for a little bit on talking about basketball. But the Gators did grab a commitment over the weekend. I believe, if memory serves me correct in basic research, this is the highest ranked offensive lineman that the Gators have gotten in about a decade or so. So the Gators grabbed Peyton Joseph, 6'4", 305 pounds, interior offensive lineman from Houston County, or maybe it's Houston County. I think I mispronounced that last time. From Houston County High School, from Warner Robins, Georgia. 4 stars, ranked as the 106th overall player in the country. Gators grab him over the likes of Florida State, Georgia Tech, LSU, Oregon, Texas, Alabama, Georgia Tech, Kentucky, and a number of other schools. So, gentlemen, what are your thoughts on Peyton Joseph's commitment to the Florida Gators?
Rob Sell said, hold my beer, bro. Y'all said I'm the worst of the two. No, very good get. Interior lineman. We need guys to be able to protect our quarterbacks. We're doing a good job of getting top tier guys to come in, and he looks like a recruiter himself. He's reaching out to Antoine Hill, the quarterback who I have as QB1 this cycle on the Twitter, and Antoine Hill reached back out to him. So it seems there's a lot of chemistry between these guys, but an incredible get early on in the cycle. I like what we have in the fold so far. It's all about, at this point, we've seen us get off to a good offseason last year with recruiting, then we lost some after a bad season and how the season played out. So I think we're going to recruit well this offseason. It's good to see our offensive line recruiting do step it up early, But I think we're going to recruit well. It's going to all be about us winning games to keep this class in the fold. So very good get.
Yeah, no, I know. Cornelius Cromartie said, "Man, it's too early to be hyped about 25 kids." I get it, right? And we know, we've talked a lot about it on the show, that there's a lot that can happen between now and December, but we want to give these kids their light now. Florida obviously had a run of decommitments there at the end, but for the most part, most of these guys did stay in the class. Offensive linemen, while they can there can be some drama with some of them. For the most part, it does seem like a lot of them usually lock in pretty early. They're looking for opportunity for development. So we will see. Obviously, there's a lot that can happen between now and December or February when he signs next year, but definitely want to give credence to his commitment now. So Peyton Joseph, a good get for the Gators. Like I said, highest ranked offensive line commit in about a decade or so. So kind of crazy to think about that it's been that long since the Gators grabbed somebody right around the hundreds. But again, a huge pickup for the Gators, big pickup for Billy Napier, Rob Sale, and this offense. So a guy that I think can grow and develop, plays some elite football there in Georgia, plays at the highest caliber of football in Georgia. So being able to go into the backyard of Georgia Tech, a few other schools, to be able to grab him is definitely a big plus for the Gators. So the Gators start off their recruiting class in a good spot for 2025. Let me just pull up that list. I know that they obviously, if you have him in that mix and in the fold there, Jalen Wiggins, a guy that committed to the Gators about a month ago from Rickards High School there in Tallahassee. He's the number 56 overall player in the country as a defensive lineman. Waltez Clark, the running back, ranked 209th, and then Joseph Abdullah, the wide receiver, who committed back in January as well. So a good start with those four, and then just continue to add more and add talent, and then do your best to have a great season and keep these guys in the fold, because that's how you're going to be able to build to a program that is sustainable for the future.
That film look good. I ain't gonna lie. Gets to the second level well. Athletic kid, big, strong, mauler. That's how you want to draw up an interior offensive lineman, man. Shout out to Sale. We'll see if we can hold on to him. It's gonna come down to winning games. You did make a good point. Offensive linemen tend to stick. They don't tend to flip and play the games. Quarterback is similar. The skill position is usually the guys that, with the shenanigans and the pass rushers and whatnot. But offensive linemen tend to stick.
All right, perfect. Nick, any update? I know the Gators are still without a head strength and conditioning head right now, but what's the path that Florida's taking as they enter a very integral time of the offseason?
Yeah, Tyler Miles, who came in right before the 2022, not right before the season, but came in and was here in the offseason before the 23 schedule. He's working, leading the group, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up getting the job.
Okay.
Really will. I mean, he just did a search for strength coaches, so that list of guys that have already been vetted is right there, probably still on his desk. But there's a lot of support in the locker room for Tyler Miles. The team, the guys really like him. He spent time kind of all over the place. I think he was at Duke before coming to Florida.
Let me run through that, just because that's a name that we've not really talked about. So he's currently Florida's director of player athletic development. Like you said, Nick, in the 2022 season, he was at Duke, where he was the assistant director of sports performance. Prior to Duke, he was the assistant strength and conditioning coach at the University of Miami. Prior to that, he was at Boost Performance in Nashville, which does combine training in NFL and college off-season workouts. So he was there for 2 years. He also worked at Tennessee State as their head strength coach for football and volleyball. He was an intern at the University of Tennessee, University of South Carolina, Northwestern State, which I believe is in Arkansas. And then he was with the Salt Lake City Stallions in 2019 and 2018. So definitely a young guy, looks to be maybe in his late 20s, early 30s, but certainly has risen the ranks pretty quickly. And I would imagine that him working closely with Craig Fitzgerald for the 5 weeks that he was there, as well as Mark Hockey before that, has a good plan in place for what these next few weeks look like.
Northwestern State is in Natchitoches, Louisiana.
One state off.
What?
He was at Northwestern State for a little while.
Dan said Arkansas, so I Googled it to fact check him.
Wrong. Missed that one.
That's the only reason I'm here.
That's on me.
Checking Dan.
I'll get it fixed.
And I probably said Natchitoches.
Another fact check error by Dan the Man.
Mm-hmm.
So Tyler Miles taking over. Spring practice starts in 2.5 weeks.
March 7th.
Okay. So right around 2.5 weeks or so. So Tyler Miles will have that role. I would imagine, like you said, Nick, we will not see a replacement hired before the end of spring practice. It just doesn't make a ton of sense right now.
Yeah, a lot of things not making sense right now.
Yeah. But we got criticized a little bit last week, especially me, saying I was a little too negative. So trying to scale it back and bring the positive hopium that this fan base wants right now.
No one can be as positive as me, Dan, but you should strive. You should strive to reach my levels of positivity. It's like one of those, shoot for the moon, you'll land among the stars.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Dark Side Dan came out last week, so nothing's changed. Just how I'll deliver that to you guys. Nick, while we wait for Neil, let's talk a little bit baseball. Before we do that, let's give a quick shout out to our friends at Home Field Apparel. HomeFieldApparel.com, promo code Stadium and Gale at checkout will give you 15% off of your order. Again, go check it out. Incredible products for the University of Florida, as well as Trevor Sikkema was wearing one when he went to the combine. They have one of those cool starter jacket looking jackets that they released last year. Really cool products over there. Again, not just University of Florida, about 100 different colleges and universities all over the country. So any family, friend, or loved one, as well as the Indianapolis Colts. So Harrison can buy a few things from Home Field Apparel. So again, homefieldapparel.com, Stadium and Gale at checkout, all one word, will get you 15% off of your first order. Nick, the Gators plan to play 3 games against St. Joseph's University this weekend. St. John's University, sorry. St. John's University loses the first game, and then Saturday and Sunday both get canceled due to rain. I did notice that golf held an entire tournament on Saturday, and they were still able to play. But Nick, give us the background of what happened with baseball on Friday, and then ultimately the scheduling snafus that led to 2 canceled games.
Well, we'll do scheduling first. So Saturday, the rain. I mean, it rained all day Saturday from around 2 p.m. and not torrential, but just constant rain from 2 p.m. Really until like 8 p.m. last night, Sunday. So just an entire washout for the weekend. I was surprised. I enjoyed it, but surprised. Typically, baseball will wait until the last minute to cancel a game. I was at a coffee spot, no free spots, no free ads. So I was at a random coffee spot. When I got a text message saying like, "Hey, we're banging the game today. Game's off." And I was like, "Oh man, that's early. Normally, I'd be sitting at the park for 4 hours with the tarp on the field before they decided to cancel the game." They had already moved the game from 4 p.m. to noon to 10 a.m. So they were trying to get it in, but it was unlikely that they were going to be able to get in the game on Sunday. So I think they were really trying Saturday, and then. Obviously, getting washed out 2 of your first 3 is not great. I'll be interested to see what they do. I think Jack Caglione needed a little bit of a rest with his arm dealing with some tendonitis. But Liam Peterson, the freshman, I will be interested to see if he throws 2-3 innings on Tuesday before his Saturday start because he hasn't thrown in a game. If you get to this weekend against Columbia, it'll be over 2 weeks that he's thrown in a game. So it'll be interesting to see how you handle those things. I mean, the biggest, like, no one's going to go undefeated in the college baseball season.
I don't like that energy.
No, it's never happened.
Negative Nick is back.
Negative Nick.
Damn it, I'm back. I think the biggest thing with baseball is like when you lose a game, you're like, oh, there's always tomorrow. And then you're sitting with an upset loss to St. John's. You're sitting with that for 5 days before you get a chance to go back out, which is a long time for baseball. Yeah. And then that Friday game, like, you just didn't have it. Cade Fisher goes out there, did not have his stuff. Struggled to find the zone. And then when he was in the zone, they were kind of jumping on fastballs. He really needs to develop that third pitch. He's fastball, slider, changeup. Really needs to develop that changeup, and he's worked all off season on doing it. But it will be tough to be a Friday night guy or a weekend guy when you start the SEC season if you don't have that third pitch. If you're just fastball, slider, guys at this level will jump on it, especially if you're throwing 91 to 94. He needs to be able to throw all three pitches to both sides of the plate and into any counts. So that's something he's working on. He spoke to us after the game, which I thought was impressive. There's sometimes these baseball kids come through and you only talk to them when they win games. So it was nice to see him stand there and talk us through what he was feeling and what went wrong. But Florida's down quick 7-0, and now you have to start pressing offensively. So I think they had some good at-bats.
I wasn't nervous down 7-0, though, because of last year. I was like, man, that ain't nothing. We go get that.
Yeah, I mean, this team's going to be able to hit home runs. Colby Shelton hit one 400 feet. Said some words to the pitcher, which when I was able to watch it back, was able to lip read.
What
I won't repeat them.
Say it, bro. This is a rated R show.
We're gonna get demonetized.
Don't know. Where's St. John's? In Queens, right?
Queens.
Probably not the school to want to square up to in a verbal altercation, but you know.
Well, it's interesting. So, like,
you never know. So I don't know.
They're not from the Bronx, Dan. I think kids playing baseball in New York are probably not from the Bronx.
These boys think I ain't watching baseball. That's crazy, man. See, they don't believe in me in the comments, man.
Yeah, no Cornelius Cromartie says Unc capping. He ain't watching no baseball. Probably not watching the game live, but definitely seeing the score on the timeline. And then Harrison Sanchez hit us with a what does the word rhyme with, Nick?
Nick can't rap.
Puck. So. Puck. Wussy would be a good rhyme.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good
what
hockey.
Colby Shelton
That's what
said.
they say in hockey to each other. Puck you, wussy.
Yep. Yeah. It a nice point at the pitcher. Puck you, wussy. And immediately the umpire runs after him. That's a warning. That's a warning. You're gonna get these smaller schools like St. John's came down, got up early, and then they were talking. And good, you should. Yeah. The Hard Rock Bets didn't even have a line for the game, which would make sense. Like Miami was a 1,300 betting favorite on Friday, and they needed to walk off on Friday. It's baseball. You're going to get small teams that beat the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams in the country. So Florida's back at it.
Any given Tuesday afternoon, any given Wednesday, every given Thursday.
Speaking of, Florida will have UNF twice this week at Jacksonville. I'll be up there for that.
Bless your heart.
Don't do it, Dan. Don't do it, bro.
I just said it, bless his heart. Nick, we have Neil Blackman waiting for us. So the Gators going to win this week. Who do they have this weekend?
UNF on Tuesday, Wednesday, and then the boys from Columbia, not South, North Columbia.
Also New York.
Yep. Yeah, well, it's 30 degrees in New York right now. Not really baseball weather. They're trying to get out of that and come down to the Sunshine State.
I love it.
Typical snowbirds up in New York.
So the Ivy League coming down to the Harvard of the South when Columbia joins. Well, we've got Neil Blackman from Saturday Down South, Florida Basketball Hour as well, joining the program.
Neil, what it do, baby?
It was good to have you back, brother. I think the first time on video. I think the last time was just when we were just an audio media.
Yeah, you guys moved up in the world real fast.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're somewhere.
Shout out to our sponsors for
yeah. Shout out
allowing
to
us-
Lucy Home
Had
allowing
nothing
us
to do with
yeah.
and
had nothing to do with
Hall.
you guys being awesome. No, not at
Oh
all.
man.
All your sponsors.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but buy stuff from our sponsors so we can keep leveling.
We just
up.
here to pump. Just here to pump sunshine, baby.
Not last week, man. I got a lot of anyway. So Neil, you are one of the foremost experts on Florida Gators basketball. Let's talk a little bit about them right now. 18-7, 8-4 in the conference. Portal God Todd is now 4-0 against Mike White. But talk to us a little bit about the Gators. 7 of the last 8, a couple of big wins in there, Kentucky, Auburn. But talk to us a little bit about the Gators basketball program.
Yeah, man, they're good. The short version is this is a good team. It's a good team, and they've got the best guards in the SEC. And I think they don't have the best guard in the SEC. Alabama does, the team they'll play this week, but they have the best group of guards. And elite guard play as the season goes on, elite guard play wins college basketball games. And so, what you're seeing is that. But you're also seeing Florida has enough in the front court, right? It's not if something happens to Colin Castleton, he gets in foul trouble, he gets injured, they're in deep trouble. It's not the late year Mike White teams where there was one big man and really, some guy that they took a flyer on coming off the bench to provide no help, really. So I think you have a deep front court and obviously Tyrese Samuel is a big time player. He's played in the Big East, which is a great league for multiple years, and he's been real good. But they're getting contributions now from the younger guys in the front court, whether it's Micah Hanlockton, who came over from the Sun Belt, and he came from Marshall. So at Marshall, they play real fast, and he was kind of just a rim runner. And they don't play much defense at Marshall. It's Mike D'Antoni's brother coaches there. They just want to get up and down. And I think adjusting to playing defense and physicality is huge it's just like football. I mean, if you go to the SEC and you're a high level transfer from a smaller league, there's an adjustment period usually, unless you're just a freak like Osiris Torrance, right? So football translate to basketball. I think Micah Hanlockton learning how physical he has to be to contribute. And then this staff, I mean, look, the evaluations that they made on these two young bigs, Thomas Hawk and Alex Condon. I mean, the list of people who offered them it's interesting. I sent out a tweet the other day where, I kind of put up the list that Tommy Hawk had, and his best offer was Northwestern other than Florida. But Florida trusted their evaluations, right? They put in the work and said, here's what we see. And some of that is Torian Green, which is what Todd told me on Saturday after Florida won was, hey, we got this guy. We brought in Torian to run our player development program and to help with evaluations. And Tommy Hawk, coach's kid, played at a good program. And they were just, Torian Green said, coach's kids have worked out pretty well here at Florida. I like the way this guy plays, and it's worked, man. I mean, Tommy's playing his best ball, and then Condon goes to this NBA academy in Australia, and a lot mid-major programs that are good, like St. Mary's and Gonzaga, have been rating that place for years. Gonzaga rated it so much they're not really considered a mid-major anymore. And Florida said, "We're going to go get this guy that has offers from St. Mary's, Gonzaga, and Utah." And nobody else offered him in the entire country. We're going to offer him and see what happens. And he is so far ahead from an offensive standpoint than any freshman big that's been at Florida in, probably 10 years. And Pat Young was joking Pat Young was joking that if I had his offensive skill set as a freshman, I wouldn't have played 4 years at Florida.
So you said it's Hawk?
So Tommy Hawk is the forward that is from Pennsylvania, and then Alex Condon is the other young freshman. So the point is, Florida has elite guards. I think they have the best point guard in the SEC in Zion Pullen. And then they have a front court that's getting better and better. So what they have is a chance to get better as the season goes on, even from where they are now, which is a team that's, they lost one game by 1 point. That's their only loss in the last month plus.
That's crazy. Yeah, Tommy Hawk goes off for 17 points, obviously a season high for him. I guess a career high, too, for playing that game. But 0 points against Kentucky, 3 points against Texas A&M, 2 points against Auburn, 2 points against LSU, and then goes off for 17 points, 7 rebounds, a block shot, a steal. Just a great game for him. Gators, obviously, tough matchup ahead at home, at Alabama, this Tuesday. Alabama, I believe, has won every game, but maybe one at home over the last 2 seasons, or maybe have lost 2. But what can the Gators expect going against Alabama tomorrow?
Yeah, great question. Look, I think Florida will play pretty free and loose, given the streak that they've been on. They didn't lose the game at Georgia. Obviously, they had to come from behind win, and I think that was huge. Golden said it pretty well. He said, if we're going up to Alabama coming off really what would have been our first bad loss of the year, maybe we're tighter, maybe we're desperate, we're afraid to make a mistake. I want to go up there and not be that. And their one loss was to a team, Alabama's one loss at home was to a team sort of similar to Florida in that they have a dominant player, PJ Hall, their big man, and a really good offensive team that doesn't play great defense. And that's kind of how I would characterize Florida, a team that is very good offensively, but not great defensively. And that's how I'd characterize Alabama, right? Like Alabama doesn't guard anyone. It's not last year's Alabama where they had Brandon Miller and Charles Bediako, and they could just rough you up inside and really guard you, and they were physical, and that's how they got the number 1 overall seed. This team is a lot different. I mean, it's sort of a mid-major all-star team. Mark Sears, I think, is the best player in the SEC. He's a guard that they use a ton. He's got a chance to be the first guard in the SEC since Scotty Wilbekin to have an offensive rating over 120 with a usage rate of 30. So that means that 30% of Alabama's possessions end with Sears taking a shot, committing a turnover, or drawing a foul. Like they are not like it's what Silk say. It's like Novocaine, right? It's that what's coming, and it's gonna work anyway. They aren't out there to confuse you.
Shout out to Coach Herman Boone. We've got 3 plays. Boone. Give them time. They work like Novocaine.
Yeah, that's Alabama's philosophy. I mean, they're going to shoot the 3, and they are going to drive you and attack the basket. They don't take mid-range jumpers. They take what my guy Eric Foster would call, either high quality, high percentage shots or at the rim, or they take high reward shots outside the arc. And Florida's going to give up 80, 85 points. Is Florida going to be able to score with them? Probably. But I would expect it to be a pretty competitive basketball game. It's interesting, like, to me, having done Florida Basketball Hour for this our 6th season of that, and, Fawcett and I were talking about it, and this is the first time in late February where there's a path to the SEC championship. And if Florida wins this week, then that path is actually a lot more wide open than people realize.
Yeah, I think I was reading that Florida is a Tennessee loss away from being able to control their own destiny. And I know the Tennessee schedule is not super easy from here on out. Neil, before I forget, wanted to ask, I know that there was certainly a lot of excitement about Riley Kugel coming back this year. I know towards the end of last season, he was really lighting the basketball world on fire. And I know a lot of people thought that he, could potentially go to the NBA last season and was definitely a player to watch this season. It seems to me like we've gotten a lot of hot and cold from Riley Kugel this season, averaging 10.5 points, 3.8 rebounds this season. But what's kind of been going on with Riley Kugel? Is it mental? Is it the way that he's playing?
It's a great question. I think early in the year, I saw a lot of people saying, "Oh, they're not really running stuff for Riley," and that was nothing could be farther from the truth. They were trying to get Riley around screens, trying to get him to attack the basket. They were trying to run plays where he could come off a screen and catch and shoot. And Riley was catching the ball and playing tentative. He was rejecting screens, which if you're 6'5" and built like a SEC linebacker. You should not be rejecting screens set to get you downhill. So he's been tentative. He does not finish well at the rim. I'm not breaking any news on Stadium and Gale. You guys know what you see with your eyes. You don't have to coach basketball or follow it like I do to know that. And so that finishing problem has continued, but I think the early shooting slump kind of affected his confidence. He's been shooting better lately, although the last 2 games, it's kind of been iffy again. The one thing he's done that I did want to, I have been pointing out is, and I will say, and I think y'all know this, because you guys cover a lot of different sports and football players in particular, like he's finding ways to impact winning. He is Florida's best defender and has been all year, especially on the ball. And, so all of that is great. Like this body language stuff, I don't put much into that. He was leading a team huddle multiple times in the Georgia game. I was in Athens for that. I think he's a leader. He wants to win. But yeah, the offensive struggles, Dan, are real. And for a guy that's one of the highest paid NIL dudes in the league, I think it's safe to say it hasn't been the year that anybody hoped for. And if Florida wants to make a deep run like second weekend, they need good Riley. They can't have, the Riley at Georgia that they can't even put on the floor the last 6 minutes.
We're hot right now, doing pretty well. Is the blowing of leads still a concern for you?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Look, they've had 7 leads this year of double digits in the second half. In 6 of those games, they've either lost or won by 5 points or less. That's not, and I think so. Todd said some of it's mentality, like they haven't learned culturally how to keep their foot on the pedal yet. And he said that's on me, that's on our staff. We have to continue to impress upon them the need to do that. Some of that is that this team is disinterested defensively at times. So we saw that in the first half against Georgia. And I point that one out because everyone can see it in a comeback, right?
What's defense if nothing that's just getting in the way of my next shot, Neil?
Yep.
If we just don't play it, my next shot comes quicker.
So when Georgia is getting into the paint at will with mediocre guards, that's about want to. And that was the big challenge that they got from Coach Hartman and Coach Golden in the locker room at halftime against Georgia. It was like, what do you guys want your identity to be? Because right now it could be Walt Clayton and Zion Pullen are really damn good. and the rest of you don't seem to want to help us win. And they're not normally calling out individual players like that, but I think that makes some sense. So Florida gets in front of Georgia, and Georgia, in classic Blanco fashion, goes 8 minutes without a bucket, right?
Shout out to Blanco, man.
But some of it's Blanco and their offense being like, my offenses at Westminster Academy were more threatening than Blanco's. All right. And some of it is also like Florida just guarded them, right? They're like, you know what? We're not going to let you get in the paint every damn drive now. And I think
shout out to Mike White, the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, no doubt. But you look at this hire, right? And now you look at the way he's worked the portal. I like Todd, the portal god. That's good.
Yeah.
He is, I think he's 12 or 13-1 against people hired contemporaneously with him. The one loss was without Castleton to Miss State in the SEC tournament by a point. So he's beaten the guys that were hired with him. And I think, because people keep asking me about it, I think the recruiting on the high school level, which is the next big piece from a program standpoint, is going to pick up soon. But their evaluations have been really good too, right? Like they signed what was supposed to be the worst class in the SEC, and they have 2 of the best 5 freshmen in the league.
That's crazy. What does this roster look like? I mean, obviously, I know that the last 2 seasons have been transfer portal patchwork, and we're seeing it all over college basketball. It's not just at the University of Florida. What does this roster look like next year? Are they going to keep Clayton and Pullen and Samuel and Richard and Kugel, and obviously Condon will still be here. Hawk will still be here. What does this roster look like next season?
So the 2 big challenges are they lose Zion Pullen. He's out of eligibility.
Okay.
So he's going to play. I think he's going to play in the NBA or the G League and be pretty good. I've had 5 different SEC coaching staffs now tell me, man, we watched Zion Pullen on film in the portal, and we knew he was pretty good, but he's the best he's the best point guard in our league.
Wow.
I had a Kentucky assistant text me yesterday and said, it's not even close either. He said, it's not even close how much better he makes it. So that is the biggest challenge for Florida will be, how do you replace Zion Pullen? I think Riley Kugel will come back. His NIL package beats what a G League deal would be. It's really that simple. And he has things to work on. And again, with Torian here, Florida cares about development again, which my biggest, other than offense, the biggest problem under Blanco was players did not get better. It wasn't competitiveness. It wasn't defense. They won a lot of games, right? But the ceiling was so close to the floor because they weren't developing. They recruited pretty well, but they didn't develop them. That's not the case with this staff. And then, so I think they'll get Kugel back. Clayton is an interesting one to me because you talk to 5 NBA scouts, you get 5 different answers.
Right.
Get to me, I try to look at it, okay, step back. If it's my son and he can score like a pro already and he just had a baby, so either your NIL package for him is really good, and Florida's in a really good place from an NIL standpoint in basketball. And I don't think people understand, because there's so much talk about Florida needs to buck up on NIL and football. And that's probably true. But from an NIL space and hoops, it's a little easier. You get 1 or 2 or 3 big donors.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to Chandler Parsons.
Yeah, you're good to go. Right. So Florida's war chest is fine. They could put together something for Walt. Does he want to be a college basketball player for another year? So I think that, we saw Todd recruit Colin Castleton back, but Colin's situation was a little different.
Yeah. Yeah, no, obviously, we've seen a lot of talent out of the transfer portal, and I would imagine you continue to see this development out of these guys. You're going to continue to see Florida being able to attract, better and better talent out of that the transfer portal. But it's been miraculous work so far. Obviously, the job's not done with portal god Todd over there, but so far the results are strong. It's funny, he spoke to the Pinellas County Gators Club a few months ago, and he didn't want to allude to the nickname. And then Paul Salmons, a friend of the program, a really good buddy of mine, screamed out Portal God Todd, and he just smiled. He's like, yeah, I've heard it. He's like, if that's what you want to call me, that's what we're going to call him from now on here.
I like it.
So Gators now.
I privately texted our Stadium and Gale group text, and I think I texted Neil too during one of those long offensive droughts. I said he might just be Mike White with spreadsheets.
No.
And since then, just ripped off a string of wins. So
yeah,
high proficiency with the spreadsheets.
No, so Neil, I guess final couple questions here. Gators right now sit in a decent position right now to compete, for the SEC regular season title here. Obviously, they'll make it into the tournament. The SEC tournament obviously looks like they're going to make it into the NCAA tournament for the first time in a number of years now. Where do you kind of forecast, this Gators team likely finishing up this season?
Yeah, I think that they'll go either 4-2 or 5-1 down the stretch. I think that the coin flip game is the Bama game in the O-Dome. And if they're 5-1 down the stretch, Fawcett and I were joking about it. If they're 13-5, you mentioned, 1 game away from controlling your own destiny. Mm-hmm. If they finish 13-5 in the SEC, there's there's still a not terrible chance they're SEC co-champions. It just kind of depends on what happens with Tennessee. And like, does Tennessee have 2 losses in them? That could be tough, but in any event, I think they'll get to 12-6 in the league. And then that should get them a 5 or a 6 seed. I think they're being undervalued a little bit by some of the bracketologists right now because their strength of record is 17th. So that would be like the first 5 seed. That's one of the things that they use. They don't just use Ken Palm. That's the one all the announcers talk about, but the committee uses Bart Torvik too, Florida's top 16 in Torvik, which would be a 4 seed. And then like I said, elite guard play wins in March. It has forever. That is a truism. So, if Florida plays a team that doesn't have guards that are as good as theirs, which is most everybody, they will have at least somewhat of an advantage in the NCAA tournament. Now, the holding leads thing, like, could I see a scenario where Florida is in the second round and playing a 3 seed and they're up 15 points and say they're the 6 and they get a 3, they're up 15 and then they collapse? Absolutely. I could see that scenario playing out. I could also see a scenario where Florida's guards carry them to the second weekend, and then depending on which 1 seed you get or which 2 seed you get, like, there's no reason that they couldn't make an Elite 8 run. What I don't want to see from anybody, this is my PSA, use this few moments on Stadium Gale to PSA folks. Please don't send me any bullshit in my DMs about how Mike White made the Elite 8. And if Todd loses in the second round of the Sweet 16, that proves, like, no, like, this Florida team is the best Florida team. Just pay attention to what you're watching. That's all I'm asking you to do.
That they definitely turned
Neil,
the corner.
I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you watch basketball closely enough, but Mike White took the Florida team to the Elite 8.
Oh my God. That's
there was
the one.
Who was it? I think you guys shouted him out on the Florida Basketball Hour. There was somebody that was pumping Mike White's tires this offseason. Oh, John Rothstein. Yeah, he said that Georgia was one of the better programs in the SEC, and that Mike White deserves credit for their start to the season. They are playing like a traditional Mike White team now. So I'm sure that
they definitely are.
They
definitely are playing like a traditional
I looked through his timeline. A lot of comments on basketball, none on Mike White or the Florida Gators during that time. Neil, I do have a question for you right now. You mentioned Gator strength of record is 17th in the country right now. Still, Florida is not ranked. I mean, maybe they will be this week, but why do you think Florida's not been ranked yet?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a great one, and I think the biggest reason is just the last couple of seasons and public perception of the program, right? Like, Florida went from having the longest NCAA tournament appearance streak in the SEC to not being really a bubble team at all last year, right? They went to the NIT, got blown out on their home floor by UCF. The year before, they were barely on the bubble when they got to the SEC tournament, lost. Blanco quit the next day, went to Georgia. So, yeah, no, good. I mean, I still
can't believe the University of Georgia paid the University of Florida real American dollars for Mike White.
It's astonishing. Yeah. And like, it actually, like, that is encouraging to me. Like, as an American just grinding, like, you just never know, like, what opportunity could befall you, even if you're mediocre.
Yeah.
No, that's fact.
The athletic director somewhere, you're good for the rest of your career.
I mean, good God. But so I think there's a perception issue. Like, it's still, and that's the thing. That's the attention, and the eyeballs matter, man. They matter to recruits. They matter to, I think this is as energized as the fan base has been about basketball in a long time. Florida started a year in the beginning of this decade, the COVID year. They started the year in the top 5. Now, they were in the top 25 some that year, on and off, but they could never really get any consistency from a team that had a bunch of NBA players on it. And so, look, I mean, I think they should probably be getting more respect than they're getting based on their strength record, based on their efficiency numbers. I did see Gary Parrish, who I think is great, put him in his top 25, but then Tom Fletcher, who I think is great at On3, didn't have him in his ballot this week. So, it'll be interesting. Like, I'd hate for them to get ranked this week and get boat raced by Bama. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it'll be a competitive game.
Neil, what we've seen the team kind of turning the corner this year and showing some improvement. What are you seeing differently from Todd Golden? Like how has he become? He's coming to his own a little bit. What are you seeing differently from him?
No, that's a good question. Look, I think that they don't run a lot of stuff on offense, but what they run really well. And then it's a roster construction thing. Like this was a huge development, and roster construction were a problem under the prior regime. This team has built a roster. Todd said, you know what I want to do? I want to go get really good guards that can run my ball screen offense. But then when we miss shots, we have got to compete on the glass because it's the SEC and everybody's super physical. Well, Florida's second in the country in rebounding percentage, offensive rebounding percentage. So when they miss shots, they get second shots. Well, that's how you offset. Like, if you don't run elite offense, which I'd say Florida's offense is good, but again, it's not terribly multiple what they do. But it doesn't matter if you're getting multiple possessions every time, right? Like that's how you what do you do to correct the things you're not as strong at as a coach yet? Well, you go out and build a roster that can handle some of your deficiencies. So Todd has done that really wisely, I think. And Florida doesn't have a lot of wings, which has been a problem in a couple of their losses. They don't have those, kind of 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" dudes that are real switchable, can guard 5 spots. They would have had one with Edge Jarvis, the kid from Gale.
Yeah.
Who, he had to quit basketball, had a medical thing, I think. But, yeah, I mean, look, it's still one of the most well-constructed rosters in the league. And again, getting his evaluations right with Houck and Condon is also key. The one thing I will say too, Silk, is like Todd is definitely a smart defensive dude. Like he understands defense. So I think that's a point of pride for him right now. It's like, why is my team looking disinterested defensively? Because it isn't my scheme. Like it's not what Florida does from an X and O standpoint that's hurting them on defense. It's, just will to guard.
Well, Neil, we appreciate your time today, my friend. I know that you're a busy guy, and I appreciate you carving out a probably longer than allotted time during your day to talk a little bit about Florida Gators basketball. But it's exciting to talk about the improvement that the Gators basketball program is making, and we appreciate your time. Before you leave, let everybody know where they can follow you. I know you do some writing. Obviously, I know you have your podcast as well, so let everybody know where they can follow you along.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me. I get Twitter at NW Blackman. Or you can follow the Florida Basketball Hour Twitter at Florida BB Hour. And then, check out our podcast. I can tell people are excited because we've got ridiculously, for us, ridiculously good numbers right now. And that's exciting because we've been plodding along for 6 years, wondering when we'd have a really good team to cover. Not everybody gets to De La Torre or the Sully era.
That's right.
Well, I also have to cover 4 different football coaches.
Yeah, well, so have I. So
I love it. Yeah. So, Neil, again, thank you so much for your time today. Let's get you back on in a couple weeks, and the Gators hopefully make that deep March run. We appreciate your time, my friend. We'll talk to you soon.
See you.
All right, boys. Any final thoughts before we wrap up today's episode?
Well, the whole show with no damn face comments. So
no.
Hey,
no ugly as ever. Hairline still receding. Yeah. Silk, you have Song of the Week. Let's give a quick shout out to our friends over at Alumni Hall. Go visit alumnihall.com or go visit them on Archer Road in beautiful Gainesville, Florida. Anything that you would want, accessories, apparel, golf, men's, women's, children, anybody in between, grilling accessories, tailgate accessories, whatever it might be. Go visit Alumni Hall. Tell them that Stadium and Gale sent you. But again, alumnihall.com or Alumni Hall right off of 75 on Archer Road. So let's get
Yeah,
song
man,
of
I've
the week.
been listening to a lot of Deontay Hitchcock lately. Let me get Deontay Hitchcock. How the fuck? It's TF, so it don't spell out how the fuck, but how TF.
How TF. So perfect. We appreciate everybody that watched us on YouTube, watched us on Twitter or X, formerly known as Twitter, whatever the name is now. Please make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button as well. We appreciate you guys. And Nick, I hope you have a great baseball-filled week. Silk, we will see you next week, and we hope you guys have a fantastic week. Go Gators, and we'll see you next week.